paralyzed Apache woman thrown into the river by her own tribe, until one cowboy dove in to save her. The sun had barely risen over the wide, dusty plains when the young Apache woman awoke in her small, humble dwelling at the edge of the tribe's camp. She lay on a mat made of woven reeds, the morning light spilling in through the thin fabric walls. Her body ached in places that had once been strong, places that had carried her through countless days of running, hunting, and helping her family. But now, after a terrible accident many moons ago, her legs no longer obeyed her commands. They were paralyzed, leaving her dependent on others for even the simplest tasks. She could hear the sounds of the tribe stirring outside. Children's laughter and the rhythmic thud of someone pounding grain filled the air, mingling with the occasional call of a hawk from the cliffs above. Life continued around her, unbothered by her suffering. She knew the tribe had once looked at her with pride. She had been skilled in the ways of the land, learning to gather medicinal herbs, track small game, and understand the secrets of the river that ran not far from their homes. People had respected her, but time had changed everything. The accident had come like a thief in the night. One day, while climbing to reach a nest of eggs for her younger siblings, she had slipped. Her fall had been severe, and though her elders had done everything they could to help, her legs had never regained their strength. In the beginning, the tribe had been kind. They offered help, they offered support, they carried her when she could not walk. But patience, as she had slowly discovered, could wear thin. Resources were limited, food was scarce, and some members began to whisper. Whispers turned to scowls and scowls into open disdain. She sensed the change, felt it in the way some people avoided her gaze, the way their hands itched to act before thinking. Still, she tried to hold on to hope. She smiled when children ran past her, mimicking the movements of their elders. She helped where she could, teaching what her body allowed her to teach. She remained proud of her knowledge, of her spirit, even if her body had betrayed her. But as the days passed, the whispers grew louder and her hope began to feel fragile, like thin ice over a dark river. That morning, the air carried a chill, unusual for that time of year. The river gurgled nearby, its water rushing over rocks in a familiar, soothing rhythm. But today, the river seemed darker, more ominous, as if it already knew what was about to happen. She heard the distant voices first, low and tense. They were her own people, the very ones who had once promised to care for her no matter what. She tried to ignore the dread rising in her chest, tried to tell herself it was nothing, just a misunderstanding. But when the voices grew closer, sharp with urgency and fear, she realized she had been wrong. A group of men approached, faces grim and eyes averted. They did not speak, not at first, as if words would make the deed they were about to commit too real. The woman's heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of fear that seemed to echo across the plain. She tried to sit up, to plead, to explain, but her paralyzed legs would not move. Her hands pressed against the mat, trembling, her nails scraping the rough reeds. She looked into their faces, hoping to see mercy, a flicker of doubt or compassion, but there was none. Their eyes were hard, empty, fixed only on the task they had decided must be done. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely carrying over the wind. "I am still part of the tribe. I have done no harm. Why this?" The men did not answer. Their silence was louder than any words, echoing her fear back at her. Her mind raced, remembering the stories her grandmother had told her about the river. It could give life, yes, but it could also take it in the blink of an eye. She thought of the rushing water, the rocks beneath the surface, the currents that could sweep someone away before they even realized what had happened. Panic filled her chest like a storm, each heartbeat a reminder of her helplessness. One of the men stepped forward. He looked younger, perhaps only a few years older than herself, but his eyes were void of hesitation. He reached for her arm. The woman tried to pull away, but her body refused to cooperate. Fear gripped her so tightly that it felt as if the air itself had thickened. She tried to scream, but the sound caught in her throat. Her mind spun, desperate for a solution, a miracle, any way to escape the impossible situation. The men did not speak. Their movements were swift and efficient, almost mechanical. They lifted her, though she struggled as much as her body allowed, their grip unyielding. The ground beneath her feet disappeared as they carried her toward the riverbank. She could see the water now, dark and churning, reflecting the pale morning sun in flashes that made her eyes water. She shook her head, disbelief and fear mixing with the cold, biting air. "Please," she cried again, tears streaming down her face. "There must be another way." But no one answered. Only the wind responded, whistling through the trees and across the open plains. She felt the current of the river in her mind before she felt it under her, imagining herself being carried away, imagining herself lost forever. The sound of rushing water grew louder, almost deafening, matching the terror thrumming in her chest. She had always loved the river for its life-giving qualities, for the way it nurtured the land and the tribe. Now it seemed a place of betrayal, a force that would carry her away from everything she knew. And then, before the river could take her entirely, she felt a hesitation in the men's movements, a pause that offered the faintest glimmer of hope. For a brief moment, she thought perhaps they had changed their minds. Perhaps someone within the group had remembered the times she had cared for the tribe, the skills she had shared, the loyalty she had shown. But the moment passed, replaced by the cold efficiency of their decision. They approached the river's edge, her small body trembling in their hands. She felt the ground slope away beneath her, the rocks slick and cold. She screamed, a high, desperate cry that seemed to merge with the wind, pleading with the world itself for salvation. Her body was thrown into the river, the icy water enveloping her in an instant. The current grabbed her, twisting and turning her helpless frame. Panic clawed at her lungs as she struggled to keep her head above water, but the river was too strong. She felt herself being swept downstream, the land she had known all her life disappearing from view. Her heart pounded as waves crashed over her, pulling her under and then tossing her back up again. She gasped for air, water filling her mouth, choking her cries for help. It seemed impossible to survive. Each second stretched into eternity as the current carried her further from the riverbank, from her home, and from everyone she had known. She had always been strong in spirit, brave in heart, but now she felt powerless, a small leaf caught in the unrelenting storm of water. She closed her eyes, tears mixing with river water, and whispered a silent prayer to the spirits she had always believed watched over her. And then, just as hope seemed lost, a sound reached her ears over the roar of the river, the gallop of hooves on the riverbank, the crack of a branch snapping underfoot. She opened her eyes to see a figure on horseback, moving with urgency and determination. For the first time since being thrown into the water, she felt a flicker of hope. Someone had seen her. Someone cared. Someone was coming to save her. The river continued to roar around her, but now there was a chance. A chance that she could survive. A chance that the cruel actions of her tribe might not define the rest of her life. Her heart raced with fear and relief, and she clung with all her strength to the possibility of rescue, praying that the figure on horseback would reach her before it was too late. The figure on horseback rode swiftly along the riverbank, the pounding of hooves on the soft earth, echoing across the plains. He was a lone cowboy, dressed in worn leather and a wide-brimmed hat, a man who had traveled many miles through harsh terrain and uncertain lands. His eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the river as he rode, seeking the source of the sound that had caught his attention, the desperate cries of someone struggling in the water. He had no idea who it was, only that instinct, a force stronger than fear or reason, compelled him to ride faster, to reach them before it was too late. The wind whipped across his face, carrying the scent of wet earth and rushing water. He could hear the river's roar, powerful and relentless, but he could also hear the faint, heart-wrenching cries above it. He spurred his horse forward, urging it to greater speed. The horse responded, muscles straining, hooves kicking up clods of dirt as they raced alongside the river. The cowboy's mind worked quickly, calculating the best approach. He knew the river could be deadly, especially for someone caught in its current. Yet he felt no hesitation, only the clear, unwavering sense that he must act. Ahead, the young woman struggled in the icy water, her body twisting helplessly with the force of the current. Her arms flailed, trying to reach the bank, but the river was stronger than her. Every wave that crashed over her head stole her breath and sapped her energy. She began to lose hope, her eyes widening with panic as she realized how far the current had taken her from the shore. The fear that had gripped her heart earlier now felt like a cold hand pressing down, threatening to extinguish her spirit. Then she saw him, a lone figure galloping along the bank, moving faster than any person she had ever seen. A spark of hope ignited within her chest. Could this stranger save her? Could he really reach her in time? She tried to signal him, waving her arms and calling out, her voice hoarse and broken from the cold water. "Help, please, someone help!" The cowboy saw her immediately. His eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. The river was swift, dangerous, and filled with hidden rocks beneath the surface. Yet he knew that hesitation would cost her life. He slowed his horse just long enough to dismount, then secured the reins to a nearby tree. Without a second thought, he removed his hat and jacket, leaving them on the riverbank, and stepped into the icy water. The cold hit him like a wave, stealing his breath for a moment, but he pressed forward, his legs moving carefully against the slippery stones beneath the surface. He could feel the current tugging at him, trying to push him off balance, but he planted his feet firmly and continued toward the struggling woman. His heart pounded not from fear, but from the urgency of the rescue. Every second mattered, and he knew that if he failed, the river would claim her. The young woman saw him drawing closer and tried to gather what little strength she had left. Her body, weakened from her paralysis, could not fight the river's pull for long. She realized she could not save herself, that she had to trust this stranger with her life. Fear and desperation mixed in her eyes, but she also saw determination and courage in his. He would not leave her. He could not leave her. As he reached her, he extended his arms, shouting encouragement to keep her focused. "Hold on, I've got you, just hold on." His voice was steady, strong, and full of assurance. The young woman reached out with trembling arms, and he grasped her firmly, careful to support her as he balanced against the current. The water surged around them, violent and unrelenting, but he held on, refusing to let it sweep her away. The river pushed against them, pulling them downstream with alarming force. The cowboy planted his feet and leaned into the current, using his body weight to resist the pull of the water. He called out instructions to the woman, guiding her to move her arms in ways that would help them navigate the obstacles ahead. She obeyed, desperate and frightened, but willing to follow him because she had no other choice. Together they became a single force against the river, each movement precise, each decision critical. Rocks jutted out beneath the surface, hidden by the swirling water. The cowboy carefully avoided them, knowing that a single misstep could endanger them both. The young woman felt every bump and scrape as they collided with stones, her arms trembling, her body straining against the cold and the current. She gasped for air, water streaming into her mouth and nose, but the cowboy's grip never wavered. He was her anchor in a sea of chaos, her guide through a deadly torrent she could not navigate alone. Minutes passed like hours as they struggled against the river. The woman's energy waned, and she feared she would lose consciousness. But each time she faltered, she felt the cowboy's reassuring presence, his steady hands, and his unwavering determination. He spoke to her constantly, words of encouragement and guidance, never allowing despair to take hold. "You're doing fine, keep going." Almost there. His voice cut through the roar of the river, giving her the strength to push on. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they neared the riverbank. The current still tried to pull them back, but the cowboy adjusted his position, bracing himself against the edge and carefully stepping onto firmer ground. He guided the woman with gentle but firm movements, lifting her over rocks and patches of slippery mud. Each step was deliberate, every motion calculated to keep them both safe. The woman clung to him, exhausted but determined to survive, her heart pounding with relief and gratitude. When they finally reached the bank, the cowboy collapsed beside her for a moment, catching his own breath while ensuring she was safe. She lay on the ground, shivering and trembling, water dripping from her hair and clothes. Her chest heaved as she gasped for air, tears of relief streaming down her face. The danger had passed, at least for now, and the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. The cowboy helped her sit up, wrapping her in his jacket to shield her from the cold. He checked her over carefully, making sure she had not been injured further by rocks or the river's force. "You're safe now," he said gently. "You're going to be okay." His voice was calm, steady, and filled with reassurance. She believed him, even as her body trembled with the memory of the river's power. For a long moment, they simply sat there on the riverbank, the woman leaning against him, her body exhausted but her spirit beginning to recover. The cowboy kept watch, his eyes scanning the river and the surrounding land, alert for any further danger. He knew the river had been merciless, but so had life itself, and he understood the fragile line between survival and tragedy. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, warming the plain and drying the woman's wet clothes, she began to speak. Her voice was soft, still trembling but filled with wonder and gratitude. I thought I was going to die. I didn't think anyone would come." The cowboy shook his head, a small smile touching his lips. "You're stronger than you know, but even the strongest sometimes need help. Today, I was just lucky to be in the right place at the right time." She looked at him with wide, searching eyes, trying to comprehend the reality of her rescue. She had been abandoned, betrayed by those she trusted most, and yet here was a stranger, a man who had risked everything to save her. A quiet awe filled her heart, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and disbelief. She realized for the first time in many days that not all people were cruel or heartless. Some would fight for what was right, even when it meant facing danger themselves. The cowboy helped her to a more comfortable spot on the riverbank, using branches and nearby materials to create a dry, safe space. He offered her water from a small flask he carried, and she drank gratefully, savoring the warmth and life-giving liquid. Slowly, the adrenaline faded from her body, replaced by exhaustion and a lingering sense of wonder. For hours, they remained there, recovering from the river's fury. The woman began to ask questions, and the cowboy answered them with quiet honesty. He had been traveling alone, exploring the plains and rivers, helping where he could, and he had no intention of leaving her behind. She listened, captivated by his calm courage and the simplicity of his approach to life. For the first time since her accident, she felt safe, and for the first time in many days, hope began to bloom in her heart once more. By the time the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, the cowboy helped her stand. He supported her carefully, guiding her movements, and she realized that while her body remained weak, her spirit felt stronger than it had in years. The river had tested her, had nearly taken her life, but it had also brought her into the care of someone whose courage and kindness would forever change her path. The riverbank was quiet now, the violent roar of the current replaced by the soft murmur of flowing water and the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. The young woman sat on a dry patch of earth, wrapped in the cowboy's jacket, feeling the warmth seep into her chilled body. Her heart still raced from the ordeal, her breaths coming in uneven gasps. For a moment, she simply stared at the river, the same river that had tried to take her life, now glinting in the afternoon sun as if nothing had happened. She could hardly believe she had survived. The cowboy crouched beside her, examining her carefully. He checked her arms, her back, and her head, making sure she had not suffered any hidden injuries in the turbulent water. "You're going to be sore tomorrow," he said gently, his voice calm and steady. "But you're alive. That's what matters right now." She nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Her body was exhausted, but her mind was buzzing with emotions she could hardly name. Fear, relief, disbelief, and a strange sense of gratitude toward the man who had saved her. She realized as she looked at him that she had been given a second chance at life, and that this stranger, this cowboy, was the reason. After a while, he spoke again. "We need to get you somewhere safe," he said. "You can't stay here on the riverbank. It's too exposed and the water could rise again. I know a place not far from here, a cabin I sometimes stay in. It's warm, dry, and quiet. We can rest there and I can help you figure out what comes next." The woman hesitated. She had spent her entire life among her tribe, relying on them for care and protection. To leave with a stranger, even one who had saved her life, felt frightening. But the fear of returning to the riverbank, or worse, encountering the same people who had thrown her into it, outweighed her hesitation. Finally, she nodded. I will trust you," she said softly, the words feeling strange but necessary. The cowboy extended his hand to help her to her feet. She leaned heavily on him, her arms trembling as he supported her weight. She realized, with a mixture of sadness and determination, that her legs would not carry her alone. But for the first time since her accident, she felt that being dependent on someone did not have to be a weakness. It could be a bridge to survival and perhaps a new beginning. They began walking along the riverbank, the cowboy leading the way. He kept one hand lightly on her back, steadying her as she moved, while the other held a rope he had found nearby, just in case they needed extra support. Every step was slow and careful, but with each one, the woman felt a small measure of hope. She realized that even though she had been betrayed by those she once trusted, there were still people in the world willing to act with courage and compassion. As they walked, the cowboy spoke quietly, sharing stories of his travels. He had ridden across many plains and rivers, had faced storms, and had encountered countless challenges along the way. But he spoke not to boast, but to calm her, to show that life was larger than the fear and betrayal she had just experienced. She listened intently, her curiosity mixing with the cautious trust she was beginning to place in him. Eventually, they reached a small, hidden path that led to a modest cabin tucked among a grove of trees. The cabin was simple but sturdy, with a stone fireplace and a small wooden porch that looked out over a quiet meadow. Smoke curled from the chimney, indicating a fire had been recently lit, and the sight of it brought a wave of relief to the young woman. She could feel warmth even from a distance, a promise of comfort and safety after the terror of the river. The cowboy opened the cabin door and helped her inside. The warmth hit her immediately, seeping into her chilled limbs and relaxing the tension in her muscles. She sank onto a wooden chair near the fireplace, her body trembling with exhaustion. He placed a blanket over her shoulders and sat nearby, tending the fire with practiced hands. The room glowed with a soft, golden light, and the smell of burning wood filled the air. For the first time that day, she felt a small measure of peace. He offered her water from a small jug and a piece of bread he had brought along. She ate slowly, savoring the simple meal, and felt her strength returning bit by bit. The cowboy watched her carefully, his expression one of quiet concern. "You've been through a lot," he said. "It's going to take time to recover, but you will, you're strong." The woman looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "I thought no one would help me. I thought I would die." "You don't have to thank me," he replied, shaking his head. "I did what anyone should do. I couldn't leave you there." "No one deserves that." His words were simple, but they carried a weight of sincerity that touched her deeply. she realized that she had found not just a rescuer, but someone who understood the value of life, someone who acted with kindness without expecting anything in return. The hours passed slowly. The cowboy helped her get comfortable, adjusting pillows and blankets to support her weak body. He told her to rest while he kept watch, making sure the cabin remained safe and quiet. She lay back, feeling the warmth and security of the fire, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to relax completely. Her body was tired, but her mind began to quiet as well, the terror of the river slowly fading into memory. As evening settled, they shared stories of their lives. The woman spoke softly about her childhood, the skills she had learned, and the life she had once known among her tribe. She spoke of her accident and the years that had followed, her voice tinged with sadness but also pride in what she had overcome. The cowboy listened attentively, asking questions and offering encouragement. He shared his own experiences of riding alone across vast lands, helping those in need and facing dangers of his own. Through their conversation, a bond began to form. The woman realized that she could trust him, that his presence was steady and reliable. She felt a sense of connection she had not experienced for a long time, a reminder that human kindness could still exist even in the face of cruelty and betrayal. For the first time since being abandoned, she felt safe, and that safety was more precious than anything else she had known. Night fell over the cabin, the fire casting dancing shadows on the walls. The woman lay back against the pillows, feeling the warmth of the blanket and the quiet strength of the cowboy nearby. She thought about the river, about the moment she had believed her life was ending, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. She realized that her journey was far from over, but for the first time, she understood that hope could survive even in the darkest moments. The cowboy kept watch, listening to the sounds of the night and ensuring that the cabin remained a safe haven. He occasionally spoke, offering reassurance and gentle conversation, never allowing her to feel alone. She listened, comforted by his presence, and slowly, exhaustion overtook her. She drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep, her body finally able to rest after the trauma of the river. In the morning, she awoke to the soft light of dawn filtering through the cabin windows. The cowboy was already tending the fire, and the smell of warm bread filled the air. She felt a sense of calm and relief, knowing that she was safe and cared for. Her body was still weak, but her spirit was stronger, bolstered by the courage and compassion of the man who had saved her. They spent the day together, the cowboy helping her with small movements and exercises to regain some mobility and strength. He taught her techniques to maneuver her body safely, to build endurance without strain, and to care for herself in the ways her body now required. She listened carefully, absorbing every instruction, grateful for his patience and understanding. Through the hours, their bond deepened. The woman began to see life beyond the betrayal she had suffered, realizing that courage and kindness could come from unexpected places. The cowboy, in turn, admired her resilience and spirit, impressed by her strength even in the face of immense challenges. Together, they began to build a foundation of trust, hope, and mutual respect. By the end of the day, the woman felt a small but powerful sense of renewal. The river had tried to take her life, her tribe had abandoned her, but she had survived. She was beginning to see that survival was not just about enduring hardship, but also about embracing the help and kindness of others. And for the first time in a long while, she felt that life might hold new possibilities, opportunities for safety, care, and even joy. The cowboy helped her settle for the night, adjusting blankets and pillows, and they shared a quiet meal before the fire. The woman looked at him with gratitude and a sense of quiet wonder. She realized that she had been given not just a second chance at life, but a companion who would help her navigate the challenges ahead. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, they sat together in silence, each aware of the journey still to come. The woman knew that her path would not be easy, But she also knew that with the cowboy by her side, she could face the future with courage and hope. For the first time since her accident and the betrayal of her tribe, she felt a sense of peace, a quiet understanding that life, even after suffering, could still be full of meaning, kindness, and possibility. Days passed quietly at the cabin, each one bringing a small measure of progress and hope. The young woman's body was still weak, but the warmth, care, and safety of the cabin allowed her to regain strength slowly. The cowboy stayed nearby, helping her with every task, no matter how small. He made sure she ate, drank, and rested properly, and he guided her through gentle movements that would help her build endurance and regain control over her body. Each day, the woman felt a little stronger, a little more capable, and a little more alive. At first, even the simplest movements were difficult. Sitting up in the morning felt like climbing a mountain, and using her arms to move herself from one place to another left her exhausted. But the cowboy never rushed her. He understood the limits of her body, and he encouraged her with patience and kindness rather than pushing too hard. "One step at a time," he would say with a reassuring smile. "Every small effort counts. You're doing better than you realize." The woman learned to trust his guidance. She began to follow his instructions carefully, moving slowly at first, then gradually gaining confidence. He taught her ways to use her arms and upper body to help her maneuver safely, how to shift her weight without straining herself, and how to maintain balance on uneven ground. With each exercise, her muscles grew a little stronger, her movements a little steadier. The small victories gave her hope, and with hope came determination. She refused to give in to despair, knowing that she had survived the river and that the cowboy would not let her falter. Beyond the physical exercises, the cowboy also helped her rebuild her spirit. He spoke to her about courage, resilience, and the value of life even in the face of hardship. He shared stories of people he had met on his travels, tales of kindness, bravery, and survival against the odds. Each story was a lesson, not only in practical skills but also in hope. She listened intently, her mind absorbing every word. For the first time in years, she felt that her life had meaning beyond the betrayal she had endured. They spent long hours by the fireplace, practicing exercises and talking quietly. Sometimes the cowboy would tell a story, and she would laugh, a sound that had been missing from her life for too long. Other times, she would speak of her childhood, her family, and the life she had once known among her tribe. The cowboy listened carefully, never interrupting, never judging, always offering a kind word or a gentle nod. She realized that he valued her not just for her survival, but for who she was as a person, her knowledge, her spirit, and her courage. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the cabin window, she attempted to move across the floor without his direct support. Her arms shook, her back ached, and her body protested, but she refused to give up. The cowboy stood close by, ready to catch her if she fell. Slowly, step by step, she made it across the room. Her hands pressed against the wooden floor, her face set with determination, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and triumph. When she reached the other side, she collapsed into a chair, laughing with relief and pride. The cowboy clapped quietly, smiling warmly. "See, you can do it. I told you, one step at a time," he said. She looked at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said softly. His response was simple but meaningful. "You did this. I only helped you see that you could." Over time, the woman began to feel more independent. She could move from one place to another with less assistance, perform small tasks, and even help with chores around the cabin. The cowboy encouraged her to take on responsibilities that challenged her body and mind, building not only strength but confidence. She discovered that her body, though limited, still held power and capability. The cabin became a place of learning and growth, not just survival. Their bond grew deeper each day. They shared meals, stories, and quiet moments together, each learning from the other. The cowboy admired her resilience and determination, impressed by how she faced her limitations without giving in to despair. She admired his courage, his patience, and his unwavering kindness. In a world that had been cruel to her, he had become a safe and steady presence, someone she could rely on without fear. One morning, the woman gazed out of the cabin window at the river beyond, remembering the moment she had been thrown in. She shivered at the memory, but she also smiled, realizing how far she had come. She had survived the river, escaped betrayal, and begun to reclaim her strength. And she had someone by her side who believed in her, someone who had risked everything to save her life. The thought filled her with gratitude and hope, emotions she had almost forgotten existed. The cowboy noticed her reflection in the window and joined her. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You've come a long way," he said quietly. "Every day you're getting stronger. Not just in body but in spirit." She nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest that went beyond physical strength. "I feel alive again," she admitted. "I never thought I'd feel this way after what happened. You've given me hope." He smiled, a quiet, reassuring smile. Hope is never gone, even in the darkest times. Sometimes it just needs a little help to find its way back. The days continued with routines of exercise, storytelling, and gentle care. The cowboy taught her to navigate small obstacles, to balance on uneven ground, and to use her upper body effectively. Each success was celebrated quietly, a shared moment of triumph that strengthened their connection. The woman began to realize that her life could still be full, rich with learning, friendship, and possibility. As the seasons slowly changed, she gained more confidence in her mobility. She could move through the cabin and its surroundings with minimal help, and she even ventured short distances outside with the cowboy's support. The open air, the warmth of the sun, and the beauty of the plains reminded her that life, though fragile, could also be vibrant and full of wonder. She began to explore the world around her, noticing details she had once taken for granted, the sound of birds in the trees, the texture of grass beneath her hands, the smell of the earth after rain. Through this shared journey, trust and friendship deepened. The cowboy was always there, offering guidance and support, but never taking control. He encouraged her independence while remaining a steady presence, a balance that allowed her to grow without fear. She realized that he had become more than a rescuer. He was a companion, someone who understood the importance of courage, resilience, and kindness. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, they sat together outside the cabin. The woman leaned against a tree, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sky. She thought about her journey, the betrayal she had faced, the river that had nearly claimed her life, and the courage it had taken to survive. She realized that despite the hardships, she had found something precious: safety, trust, and the beginning of a new life. The cowboy watched her quietly, sensing the change in her demeanor. She was no longer the frightened, helpless woman who had been thrown into the river. She was growing stronger, more confident, and more alive with each passing day. He admired her spirit, the determination that shone through even the smallest gestures. She had faced unimaginable challenges, yet she refused to be broken. As night fell, they returned inside the cabin. The fire crackled, casting warm light across the walls. The woman settled into a chair, wrapped in a blanket, feeling the comfort and safety of her surroundings. The cowboy tended the fire, ensuring that everything was in order, and then sat nearby. They shared a quiet meal, speaking softly about the day's progress and small victories. Each conversation, each shared smile, strengthened their bond. Before sleep claimed them, the woman reflected on all that had happened. The river had tested her, her tribe had betrayed her, and yet she had survived. She had found a companion who had shown her courage and kindness, helping her rebuild her body, mind, and spirit. She realized that life, even after hardship, could offer new beginnings, and that hope could grow in the most unexpected places. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace and anticipation for the future. She knew that challenges would still come, that her journey was far from over. But she also knew that she was no longer alone. She had someone by her side who believed in her, who supported her, and who inspired her to keep moving forward. Together, they had begun to transform fear into strength, despair into hope, and survival into life. The days grew longer and warmer as the seasons shifted, and with each passing day, the young woman felt a new sense of strength and confidence flowing through her body. The cabin had become more than a shelter. It was a place of rebirth, where she could reclaim the parts of herself that had been lost after the accident and the betrayal by her tribe. Each morning, she woke with a mixture of hope and determination, ready to take on the small challenges the cowboy set for her, learning to trust herself again. She had gained enough mobility to move around the cabin independently for short distances, using her arms and upper body to navigate safely. Each success, no matter how small, brought a sense of triumph and renewed courage. The cowboy encouraged her gently, celebrating her victories with quiet smiles and reassuring words. "You're stronger than you know," he often said. "Every day you grow a little more. Soon there won't be anything holding you back." The young woman began to realize that life could offer her opportunities she had never imagined. Before her accident, her world had been shaped entirely by her tribe, by rules, traditions, and expectations. After the betrayal, her world had shrunk to fear and isolation. But now, standing on the edge of the riverbank or walking through the grove near the cabin, she felt freedom in a way she had never known. The wide-open plain stretched before her, full of possibilities, and for the first time she could imagine a life defined by choice rather than limitation. The cowboy, too, noticed the change in her spirit. He had spent many years traveling alone, facing storms, danger, and uncertainty, and he had grown used to solitude. But in helping her, he discovered something unexpected: the joy of sharing life, of seeing someone regain hope and strength after suffering. Her determination inspired him, her courage humbled him, and her presence brought warmth to the quiet corners of his heart that he had long forgotten. One morning, as they worked together outside the cabin, the young woman spotted a deer grazing near the trees. Her eyes lit up with recognition, remembering the skills she had learned as a child: tracking, observing, and understanding the land. Though her legs were still weak, her mind remained sharp, and she could see what others often missed. She turned to the cowboy, excitement in her voice. "I remember how to do this," she said. "I can still read the land, I can still track and observe. I may be weak in body, but my mind is strong." The cowboy smiled, a quiet admiration in his eyes. "That's true," he said. "And your mind will guide you as much as your strength. Together, we can make sure you're safe and capable." Over the weeks, they spent long hours practicing together. She learned new ways to navigate the land safely, to build tools and gather resources, and even to help care for the cabin and its surroundings. Each lesson reinforced not only her body's strength, but also her sense of independence and self-reliance. She began to see that her accident had not taken everything from her. It had changed her life, yes, but it had not destroyed her spirit. And with the cowboy's guidance, she could reclaim the parts of herself that had been lost. As her body grew stronger, so did her trust in the cowboy. They shared quiet evenings by the fire, talking about the past, the present, and the future. She spoke of her childhood, of her family, and the traditions she had once cherished. She spoke of the accident that had changed her life, and the moment she had been abandoned by her tribe. And she spoke of the river, the cold water, and the terrifying current that had almost taken her life. The cowboy listened carefully, never interrupting, never judging. When she spoke of her fears, he offered comfort. When she spoke of hope, he encouraged it. Slowly, a bond of deep respect and mutual trust grew between them, stronger than any fear or doubt that had existed before. In his presence, she learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. One afternoon, as the sun bathed the cabin in golden light, the young woman decided to venture further than she had before. With the cowboy supporting her carefully, she moved along the riverbank, feeling the grass beneath her hands and the wind on her face. She could hear the river flowing peacefully now, no longer a force of terror but a reminder of survival, resilience, and the strength she had discovered within herself. "Look how far you've come," the cowboy said gently, observing her determination. "You're stronger than you realize, and you've already overcome so much." She smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest that had little to do with the sun. "I never thought I could feel this way again," she said softly. "I never thought I could feel safe, alive, or hopeful. But you've shown me that life can still be good even after everything." The cowboy shook his head, smiling. "You've done all the work, I just helped guide you. You found the courage in yourself." Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. With each passing day, she gained more strength, more independence, and more confidence. She could move farther without assistance, take care of herself more effectively, and navigate the land around the cabin with increasing skill. She began to see life not as a series of limitations, but as a field of opportunities, each step forward a triumph of perseverance and courage. The young woman also began to reflect on her past, her tribe, and the betrayal she had suffered. Though the pain of being abandoned still lingered, it no longer held her captive. She realized that her worth was not defined by the actions of others, but by her own spirit, her courage, and her resilience. She understood that leaving her tribe behind was not a betrayal of her heritage, but an embrace of her own life and potential. The cowboy, ever patient and supportive, encouraged her to make her own decisions, to choose her path forward. Together, they planned for the future, discussing where she might go, what she might do, and how she could continue to grow and thrive. She realized that the river, which had once threatened to end her life, had instead led her to a new beginning, a life filled with possibilities, trust, and hope. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills, the young woman sat on the porch of the cabin, looking out at the golden sky. She felt a deep sense of peace and accomplishment. She had survived the river, escaped betrayal, regained her strength, and discovered a new life filled with trust, kindness, and opportunity. She realized that she was no longer defined by her accident or by the cruelty of others, but by her courage, resilience, and the choices she had made to move forward. The cowboy joined her, handing her a cup of warm tea. They sat together in silence, watching the colors of the sunset reflect in the river below. She felt a quiet gratitude, not only for his courage in saving her life, but for his patience, guidance, and unwavering support. He had helped her discover the strength she thought she had lost, and in doing so had become an integral part of her journey. "You've come a long way," he said softly, breaking the silence, "and you have every reason to be proud of yourself. You faced fear, danger, and betrayal, and you didn't give up. You kept moving forward." She smiled, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sky. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "But you're right, I did keep moving forward. I survived, I learned, and I've grown stronger, and now I'm ready for what comes next." The cowboy nodded, a quiet pride in his eyes. "Whatever comes next, you'll face it with courage. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. You have me and you have yourself. That's more than enough." The young woman felt a sense of hope that was stronger than anything she had known before. She realized that life, even after betrayal and hardship, could still offer joy, purpose, and meaningful connections. The river had tested her, the tribe had abandoned her, and yet she had survived, learned, and grown stronger. She understood that her past did not define her, and that the choices she made now could shape a future full of possibility. In the weeks that followed, they prepared for the next stage of their journey. The young woman was now strong enough to travel, to explore the world beyond the cabin, and to embrace life fully. The cowboy helped her plan the journey, teaching her ways to stay safe, navigate the land, and continue building strength and confidence. She realized that she was no longer helpless, no longer defined by the river or the betrayal she had faced. She was a survivor, a learner, and a person capable of shaping her own destiny. Finally, the day came when they left the cabin together. The young woman moved with a newfound confidence, supported by the skills she had learned and the strength she had regained. The cowboy rode beside her, a steady presence, guiding and encouraging her. As they walked through the plains, she felt the wind on her face, the sun on her skin, and the earth beneath her hands. She was alive in a way she had not thought possible, and each step she took was a testament to her courage and resilience. Looking back at the cabin one last time, she felt gratitude for the place that had been her sanctuary, her school, and her refuge. It had been the setting of her transformation, the place where fear had been replaced by hope, weakness by strength, and despair by courage. And she knew, as they continued toward the horizon, that life held endless possibilities, each one waiting for her to embrace it fully. She turned to the cowboy, a smile on her face, and said softly, "Thank you for everything, for saving me, for helping me, and for showing me that life can still be good." The cowboy nodded, a quiet warmth in his eyes. "You did all the hard work. I only helped you find your own strength. But together, we've proven that courage, hope, and kindness can overcome even the darkest moments." And with that, they continued down the path, leaving the past behind, stepping into a future filled with promise, freedom, and the knowledge that even after fear and betrayal, life could still be beautiful.